Charlotte, although she's young, but remarkably steady, shows more respect for the crown than Meghan ever demonstrated. Reassigning Sussex to her isn't punishment, it's necessity. She will honor what Meghan treated carelessly.
The room did not erupt. No one shouted. No aide rushed forward. Yet the moment King Charles placed his hand on the sealed royal file and confirmed Princess Charlotte's historic new role, the air inside the palace changed instantly. Queen Camilla stared at him as if the words had struck harder than any public humiliation. In one quiet sentence, the king had altered the future. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles kept his hand on the file for a second longer, as though he understood the weight of what had left his mouth. Princess Charlotte would be formally prepared for a historic royal role, a defined future position of ceremonial and constitutional support beside Prince George. In simple terms, ceremonial duty means public royal moments that carry national meaning, while constitutional support means a trusted role around the crown's stability. Charlotte was no longer only the younger child in the Wales family. She was being marked as a protected figure in the monarchy's next chapter. Camilla did not move. She simply looked at Charles with a stunned stillness that made the room colder than anger ever could. The Queen understood what others were afraid to say aloud. This decision reached beyond schedules, family appearances, and old palace habits. It proved the king was thinking past her influence and past the comfort of the royal order. For Camilla, the pain was not that Charlotte had been lifted into history. The pain was that Charles had done it without leaving space for her voice. William stood nearby, silent but alert, carrying relief like a secret he dared not show. The prince knew one smile, one breath of satisfaction, could turn the moment into an insult. So he held himself still. He thought of Charlotte, of George, of Catherine, and of all the quiet ways palace life could decide a child's future before the child could understand it. The future king did not interrupt his father. He let the decision stand. Charles opened the file just enough to reveal private recommendations from senior household advisors, then closed it before anyone could mistake the moment for debate. Senior household advisors are experienced officials who guide royal planning behind closed doors, and their words carried force here. Charlotte's role had been discussed for weeks. The pen touched the table. The king did not ask for approval. Camilla's silence held. Inside that silence, everyone understood the confrontation had only been delayed, because before she could challenge the decision, everyone had to understand why Charlotte's name carried such emotional weight inside that room. Princess Charlotte was not present when her future was discussed, and that absence made the moment feel even heavier. Around the table sat adults carrying old wounds, private fears, and silent ambitions. Charles saw duty. William saw protection. Catherine saw a daughter being pulled toward history. Camilla saw something else entirely, a shift in power that did not include her. Charlotte's name carried more than family meaning now. She stood close enough to the direct line to matter, yet young enough for the palace to shape how the public would understand her. The direct line means the main path of succession from the monarch to the future king or queen, and that path gave every choice a sharper edge. Charles believed the decision was preparation, not promotion. The king had seen younger royals drift without purpose, then suffer when confusion became judgment. William felt pride rise in him, then fear followed close behind. The prince wanted Charlotte respected, but he knew respect inside the monarchy could become pressure before anyone called it by its real name. He remembered how duty could harden around a child, how smiling faces could hide rules no child had chosen. William kept his voice low because Charlotte was not a symbol. She was his daughter. Catherine held herself together, but the thought wounded her. She imagined Charlotte's name moving through private conversations, handled by people who spoke of protection while measuring power. The princess understood why the role mattered, because without clear purpose, a royal child could be left exposed to comparison and erasure. Yet Catherine knew clarity could become a cage. Her fear was simple. Would Charlotte be guarded or claimed? Camilla understood the answer before anyone explained it. The Queen saw that the Wales children had been placed at the emotional center of the monarchy's future, weakening any remaining influence she hoped to hold over succession-era planning. Succession-era planning means the quiet preparation for how the family will work when the next reign begins. For Camilla, this was not only about Charlotte. It was being moved to the edge. A senior courtier watched her face change when Charles said the role would be protected. permanent in preparation, and beyond informal objection. The words landed softly, but they closed every door. Charles did not look away. Camilla did not challenge him. William noticed the silence. Catherine felt it too. Beneath the decision sat a personal cost, and one person in that room knew which incident had forced the king to act. And that hidden incident, buried behind polished smiles and palace restraint, began with one ceremony that no one inside the family ever forgot. Every royal crisis has a moment people later pretend was small. This one began during the Windsor Children's Service, when Princess Charlotte was quietly moved away from Prince George during the final procession rehearsal. It lasted less than a minute. Yet Catherine noticed, William noticed, and Charles, watching from the side aisle, understood that the palace had just revealed its old instincts. Charlotte had been expected to stand beside George, close enough for the family message to be clear. The Windsor Children's Service was a private royal ceremony built around younger members of the family, meant to show unity, duty, and continuity before a wider public observance. A procession rehearsal means the planned order in which royal figures walk, stand, and appear during a formal event. That order matters because, inside palace life, placement can speak louder than words. One step forward can signal importance. One step back can feel like erasure. Catherine felt the injury before anyone explained it. She saw Charlotte search across the aisle, looking for George with that small confusion only a child carries when adults change the rules without warning. The princess did not react loudly. She did not need to. Her face tightened, and her silence became a warning. Catherine understood why it mattered. If Charlotte could be moved aside in rehearsal, she could be moved aside again in history. William stayed composed because the room demanded it, but the prince carried the moment like a wound. Later, away from the ceremony, he told Charles in a private conversation that his children would not be used as pieces in an old hierarchy of preference and silence. The future king chose each word carefully. He was not asking for favor. He was drawing a line around George and Charlotte before palace habit could harden into palace rule. Charles listened longer than William expected. The king had first believed the change was only a mistake of planning, but a documented account from a senior household aide later revealed that the adjustment followed a private recommendation from advisors close to Camilla. The recommendation pushed for traditional seniority, meaning older and higher-ranking adults would be placed ahead of the Wales children to protect the old order. That discovery changed everything. Camilla was not accused in the room, and Charles did not speak her name as though it were a weapon. But the king understood the pattern. Charlotte had not simply been moved. She had been tested by a system that still knew how to shrink a young royal without ever raising its voice. So he commissioned the sealed file that would later define her historic role and protect her place beside George. The rehearsal had seemed small. It was not. Charles connected the incident to something larger, something colder, and once he did, he knew a private conversation with Camilla could no longer be avoided. The past had given him the reason, but the confrontation would demand something far more difficult: the courage to say no to the woman beside him. When Queen Camilla entered the private sitting room, she expected explanation. What she received was finality. Charles stood near the writing desk with the file already closed, while William waited by the fireplace, silent but unyielding. There were no aides, no secretaries, no softening voices. Only three people, one decision, and the terrible knowledge that the family line had shifted. Charles had called the meeting after the formal confirmation, and that timing mattered. A formal confirmation means a decision has moved beyond private discussion and become an accepted royal position inside the household. It meant Charlotte's historic role would not be reopened, diluted, or quietly delayed. The king wanted Camilla to hear that truth directly, not through whispers in corridors or softened phrases from staff. He also wanted William in the room, because Charlotte was his daughter, and the Wales household had not merely been informed. It had been fully consulted. Camilla felt the blow before Charles finished speaking. The Queen realized the framework had already been built around her, and that was what wounded her most. She had entered expecting a chance to question the shape of the decision. Instead, she found herself standing before a completed wall. Her voice stayed controlled, but her face carried the shock of someone who had discovered too late that influence can disappear quietly. William saw that hurt, but the prince did not retreat from it. He chose his words with care, because one harsh sentence could turn protection into revenge. Charlotte deserved clarity, he said, not palace uncertainty dressed up as tradition. The future king understood why that mattered. If a child's place could be questioned in private, then every public appearance would carry doubt, and doubt was the one thing he refused to leave around his daughter. Camilla looked from William to Charles, and the silence sharpened. Then she asked the question everyone had been avoiding. Was this truly about Charlotte, or was it about removing her voice from future family decisions? The queen consort did not raise her tone. She did not need to. The accusation sat between them like a challenge, and for one long moment, the king did not answer. Charles finally looked at her with a sadness that felt colder than anger. No adult grievance, he said, would be allowed to shape the public future of a child. The words ended the argument because they gave the decision a moral weight Camilla could not openly fight. William lowered his eyes. Not in victory, but in restraint. He knew his father had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Camilla left without raising her voice. The door closed behind her, and the quiet that followed felt less like peace than warning. The confrontation had ended, but behind that quiet, the machinery of royal power was beginning to move with ruthless precision. Royal power rarely announces itself with thunder. It arrives through signatures, schedules, household orders, and names moved from one column to another. After Charles confirmed Charlotte's role, the palace machine began adjusting around the decision. Aides lowered their voices. Private secretaries compared notes, and one senior courtier watched the queen's influence narrow in real time. Charles gave the decision force by linking Charlotte's future to formal preparation, public appearances, and long-term ceremonial training, approved through the king's office. The king's office means the private team that helps the monarch manage official duties, family planning, and royal decisions that carry public weight. This mattered because Charlotte's future would no longer depend on soft promises or shifting moods inside the palace. It would have a structure. It would have protection. It would have a chain of approval that could not be easily bent. William understood the power of that structure immediately. The prince received confirmation that future public planning involving his children would pass through his office before final scheduling. Final scheduling means the last approved plan for where royal figures appear, stand, and take part in official events. For the future king, this was quiet but enormous. It meant George and Charlotte could not be moved around by hidden influence without the Wales household knowing first. It meant the old habit of deciding a child's place behind closed doors had been checked. Charles appeared calm when the papers were gathered, but calm was only the surface. A close aide later described in a documented household note how the king's hand tightened around his glasses after Camilla left, a small sign of the private strain behind his public certainty. He had not enjoyed overruling her. He had not taken pleasure in the wound. Yet the monarch knew the decision had to stand, because a child's future could not be left at the mercy of adult discomfort. Camilla sat alone afterward, replaying every word from the meeting. The queen consort understood that her objection had not simply been rejected. It had been treated as irrelevant. That realization cut deeper than open defeat, because it told her the palace had already moved to a place where her resistance no longer controlled the outcome. She had once expected to be consulted, softened, accommodated. Now she had been bypassed. The sealed file carried the phrase that changed the mood. Charlotte should be protected from informal marginalization. Informal marginalization means being pushed aside without an official order, through seating plans, procession changes, and quiet decisions that look harmless from the outside. The phrase landed like an accusation because everyone understood what it meant. Someone believed Charlotte had already been made smaller once, and Charles had decided it would not happen again. The instructions spread slowly, but their meaning spread faster. William's office gained weight. Charles's decision gained teeth. Camilla's circle lost room to maneuver. And as the new order began to take shape, one immediate consequence struck the queen harder than anyone expected. Because once the palace began acting on the king's decision, she was forced to face the new reality not as theory, but as humiliation. The first sign of fallout did not come through a public statement. It came through a revised seating plan. Camilla saw Charlotte's name placed beside George for an upcoming family observance, marked with the same protective notation used for senior future-facing roles. She stared at the page for several seconds, then pushed it away as if the paper itself had betrayed her. Camilla understood at once why the page mattered. A seating plan is more than a list of chairs. Inside royal life, it shows who stands close to power, who supports the future, and who is being quietly moved aside. The Queen saw Charlotte placed beside George, not behind less central adults, and the meaning was impossible to miss. Charles's decision had left the private room and entered the daily machinery of the palace. It was no longer a sentence. It was becoming practice. Palace staff read the change with the sharp instinct of people trained to notice small movements. The Wales children now represented the future as a visible unit, not as separate symbols ranked by convenience. That mattered because George would one day carry the crown, while Charlotte would be prepared to stand near him with purpose, dignity, and protection. The crown, in plain terms, means the monarchy itself. The continuing role passed from one reign to the next. To place Charlotte near that path was to say she belonged inside the future, not on its edge. Camilla felt exposed by the quiet force of it. The queen consort had lost the argument in private, but now she was losing it in paper, in planning, in names arranged without her approval. Her resistance had not created delay. It had created distance. She had wanted her concern treated as influence. Instead, the household moved as if her objection had already been weighed, rejected, and filed away. Catherine felt relief, but it came carefully. The princess read the same change and breathed for the first time since the confirmation. Yet worry still followed her. Protection inside the monarchy could become pressure if handled without love. She wanted Charlotte shielded from erasure, not pushed into a life too heavy for her age. Catherine understood the victory, but she also understood the cost. William received the next sign in a quiet exchange with a trusted aide. The aide told him that old planning notes had been withdrawn from circulation, which meant Charles was cleaning more than one layer of palace influence. The prince heard the message clearly. His father was not simply correcting a seating plan. The king was removing the old paths that had allowed Charlotte to be minimized in the first place. Charles then sent Catherine one short handwritten line. She must never feel secondary. The note changed everything. It gave the decision a heart. It told the princess that the king's action had not been cold strategy alone, but a personal promise. And for all the shock, all the palace maneuvering, and all the pain left behind, the turning point would come not in a council room, but in a quiet conversation between two people carrying the same fear. Catherine found Charles alone after the household had gone still. No aides stood nearby. No papers waited between them. For once, the decision was not about protocol or influence. It was about a grandfather, a mother, and a little girl whose future had suddenly become the focus of a monarchy. Catherine did not thank him immediately. She asked him one question. Catherine wanted to know whether Charlotte was being protected or prepared for pressure too soon. That question carried everything she had been holding back. A historic royal role means a future position that gives a young royal clear purpose in public life, not just a place in family photographs. For the princess, that mattered because clarity could save Charlotte from being pushed aside, but it could also pull her toward duty before childhood had finished protecting her. Catherine needed to hear the difference from Charles himself. Charles did not rush his answer. The king told her the purpose was not to push Charlotte forward, not to turn her into a symbol before she understood the weight of it. He wanted her role defined so she would never be dismissed, sidelined, or left floating in uncertainty. That mattered to him, because uncertainty had damaged younger royals before. It had left some feeling useful only when needed, then forgotten when the palace moved on. Catherine listened, but the fear did not leave her face. Her voice broke when she said Charlotte was still a child. The princess did not say it as an argument. She said it as a mother who had watched adults turn childhood into strategy. Charles softened in a way few people saw. He admitted the monarchy had not always understood childhood well, and the words cost him something. The king was not defending the past. He was confessing its failure. Charles then revealed how deeply the Windsor Children's Service rehearsal had affected him. In a private recorded conversation kept for household reference, he said the moment Charlotte was moved away from George, convinced him the old habits were still alive. A precedent means a pattern that can guide future decisions, and Charles feared that if he did nothing, the small act would become a model for bigger ones. One quiet change in a rehearsal could become years of quiet erasure. Catherine finally understood. The decision was not only about Charlotte's future role, It was Charles trying to correct a pattern that had bruised generations before her daughter ever entered the room. The princess saw regret in him, not weakness. She saw a grandfather trying to protect what the monarch had nearly failed to see in time. Charles did not ask Catherine for praise, and she did not offer easy forgiveness for the pain already caused. But something between them eased. Her fear did not vanish, yet it became steadier. William's position had been strengthened. Charlotte's place had been guarded. And once the world learned that the little princess had been given a historic place in the monarchy's future, the private family decision became a national spectacle overnight. By morning, the story belonged to the world. Outside Buckingham Palace, a crowd gathered behind the barriers, phones raised, voices low with disbelief. Then came the image that captured everything. A newspaper front page showing Charlotte beside George under the headline, "The King's Little Guardian." In that single phrase, Britain understood the decision was no longer private. Charlotte's defined future role gave the public something powerful to hold on to. It gave shape to the next generation, not through a crown placed on her head, but through purpose placed around her name. A defined royal role means a clear future duty inside the family's public life, so the person is not left floating without direction. That mattered because Charlotte was close enough to George to support the future, yet young enough to be protected from the confusion that had wounded other royals before her. Broadcasters seized the story before the palace could soften it. Morning programs framed Charles's decision as an attempt to modernize royal childhood, creating a protected path for a princess who might otherwise have been overshadowed by her brother's destiny. Modernizing royal childhood means changing old habits so young royals are guided with care, not pushed into silence or comparison. Viewers understood the emotional weight at once. George would carry the crown one day. Charlotte would not be hidden behind him. Supporters gathered outside Buckingham Palace with small flowers and handwritten cards for the little princess. One card read, "Charlotte, you belong in history too." And that simple line turned the moment into something larger than palace planning. The crowd did not speak like experts. They spoke like people who understood fairness. They saw a child being protected before she had to ask for protection, and that touched something deeper than ceremony. Camilla watched the morning coverage in silence. The Queen Consort heard commentators describe the decision as the clearest sign yet of the Wales family's rising dominance. And every word seemed to tighten the space around her. She had been stunned in private. Now she was being overruled in public. The pain was not only that Charlotte was being praised. The pain was that the world understood what the palace had refused to say plainly. Charles allowed the coverage to continue. In one broadcast segment, a royal editor pointed to the front page and said, "This is not a title. This is a message about who carries the future." The king's staff waited for correction, but none came. That silence was its own confirmation. Charles did not retreat from the public meaning. He accepted it. Camilla understood then that the story had moved beyond her reach. Charlotte's moment had become a national symbol, and the Queen could no longer frame it as a private disagreement. As the nation reacted, the final meaning became impossible to avoid. This was not just Charlotte's rise. It was Camilla's defeat, and when the noise finally settled, what remained was the truth Charles had forced the entire monarchy to face. In the end, the decision was not measured by ceremony, headlines, or palace gossip. It was measured by one simple fact. Princess Charlotte had been given clarity before confusion could claim her. Charles had made his final choice. William and Catherine had secured their daughter's place. Camilla had been forced to accept that the future no longer bent around her discomfort. Charles had established Charlotte as a protected figure in the monarchy's future, giving her a defined path beside George without turning her childhood into a spectacle. A defined path means a clear understanding of future duty, public purpose, and family position, instead of leaving a young royal exposed to confusion. That mattered because Charlotte would grow up close to the crown, close to George, and close to public expectation. The king had decided that closeness should come with guidance, not uncertainty. William understood the victory, but he also understood the warning inside it. The prince knew Charlotte's place had been secured, yet he knew protection would mean nothing if the palace forgot why it had been given. Catherine felt the same weight in a quieter way. The princess saw mercy in the decision, because her daughter would not have to fight silently for recognition inside her own family. But she also knew every royal gift carried responsibility, and every responsibility carried a cost. Camilla's shock slowly became resignation. The Queen Consort understood that Charles had not merely disagreed with her. He had drawn a permanent boundary around the next generation, and that boundary could not be crossed by influence, discomfort, or private objection. For Camilla, the hardest truth was not that Charlotte had been lifted forward. It was that the king had chosen where the future belonged, and he had chosen without bending toward her pain. Charles acted not to punish Camilla, but to stop old palace instincts from shaping another royal child's life. That was the deepest revelation. The old instincts were simple: rank before feeling, silence before protection, tradition before childhood. The king had seen where that road led. He had watched younger royals carry confusion like a wound. This time, he chose to act before the wound became history. William recognized the decision as both protection and warning. The monarchy would survive only if it learned to guard its children before it guarded its traditions. Charlotte was no longer a background figure in royal history. She had become a symbol of a monarchy trying, at last, to correct itself. Camilla met the limit of influence. Charles turned duty into something personal. Catherine saw her daughter's place protected. William saw the future guarded. And the crown sent one clear final message: the future belongs to the children who will carry it, not the adults who fear losing control. There is no unresolved ending here. The decision was made. Charlotte's place was secured. Camilla was overruled. And the monarchy stepped into its next era, with the Wales children firmly at its heart. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.